What's up, everyone? Welcome to today's video. Welcome to the Gamer Dad channel. Thank you very much for tuning in. My last video, I talked about Heartland being canceled, the Division Heartland. Many of you may or may not know this was a game that Ubisoft announced that it was working on. There were numerous playtests, alphas, pre-alphas, or whatever it is that went out. And the really important thing about this is the developers were able to get a lot of feedback when it came down to this particular game. There was no ambiguity in my mind, because if you looked at, the length of when they ran these playtests, it was a long time. They probably got 2-ish plus years worth of data from gamers, and at the end of the day concluded that it was best to cancel this project. Now, what that means is the project was more than likely not viable, in a sense where they couldn't get the game to where players liked it. Possibly things were not clicking nor gelling. And believe it or not, with the cancellation, there are concerns that have actually come up that I think are valid. I got a comment here from one of my audience members that says, there will not be a Division 3 with Ubisoft canceling Heartland and shifting money and resources to more lucrative games. It's only obvious they're not spending any more money on this franchise. Well, that's a very strong claim to make, and I think it's one that does have merit in a sense. And when I say it's one that does have merit, what I mean by that is, it's natural to think that because they've canceled Heartland, they're not necessarily going to spend money on the Division franchise anymore. Now, let's go ahead and let's look at the facts that we have. Tom Clancy's The Division 1 and The Division 2 altogether brought in 40 million players into Ubisoft's ecosystem. Do you hear what I said? 40 million players have played The Division. Now, if you don't know, right, what this means is their marketing was successful enough to expose this game to over 40 million people at least, where they got 40 million people to play it. This doesn't mean 40 million people bought The Division. It means that they just have access to this number of players. Now, with this in mind, and this was a number that they gave in 2021, by the way, if any of you may be wondering, these were 40 million unique players. It was crazy when we saw those numbers. So when you keep that in mind, there's a customer base that they can basically, sell their game to, right? With this particular customer base that they can sell their game to, I don't see any reason why they'll want to basically go ahead and make that kind of move. I'm just putting it, based on my perspective. This is not saying that they're going to definitively make a Division 3. I mean, they announced that they're making one, but they could cancel it too. So there's actually some very, very good arguments to be made from that side. However, if you look at a 2021 article when they were talking about this, you could see this in the writing. Now, another thing too was it seemed like Ubisoft wanted to go the free-to-play route, the cosmetics. They've been looking for a live service game for a long time. Many of you, you've been in this pipeline for a long time. They've been looking for a live service game. They wanted to make Ghost Recon Frontlines. They were going to make a live service game out of the Ghost Recon franchise. They were going to make X Defiant a Tom Clancy game. Remember that? Then they removed the Tom Clancy from the game. They made Hype Escape. The game is actually out. And then there are still conversations of other live service games that are being tested under the Ubisoft banner. They want to replicate Rainbow Six with a successor, and they're trying everything to do it. However, it seems like most of these projects are just not panning out, and the Division Heartland just happened to be one of those that did not pan out in the free-to-play, this game that they're just going to be selling cosmetics and such. Now, I think what's happened is because this did not work out in terms of trying to get a free-to-play game off the ground using The Division or using Tom Clancy, they want to fall back to the good old way of making money, which is basically making another Division game that is more than likely a better guarantee than trying to make a game like Heartland. Why? Because the Division and the Division 2 already has a player base, or a unique player base. Let's just put it at that, of 40 million people. If you had a unique player base of 40 million people, then you tried to go out to the market and say you want to capture a player base that you've never engaged with before, that is probably more than that, and you realize that that player base may not respond, or at least your former player base that's supposed to help you kick off and launch your game is not responding, you go back to doing what it is that you were doing that made, that put you in the limelight. And with big companies, they want to keep trying all these things because their competitors are doing some things here and there, but they fail to realize that, every circumstance is different. And yes, they can try, but if they try and try and try and it doesn't work out because they've been trying and they're going to keep trying, they better go back to what it is that made them a bunch of money. Because right now, Ubisoft has made basically a lot of controversial decisions in its licensed games. Think about it. Star Wars game, very controversial game based on the pricing, based on the characters, based on Star Wars. Then they've basically, also made the Avatar game, which did not necessarily do well. Wasn't controversial by any means, but there was just not any interest in it. And now their Assassin's Creed game has come on the market, and it's also somewhat controversial as well. These kinds of things don't necessarily bode well for the, longevity, health, and sales of these games. However, with the Division community, there are things that they want to see in a Division game that transcend all of these little petty squabbles that are going on. A solid game, strong mechanics, continuity, content being dropped, all of those things that make a Division game are, few and far between. And if they don't make a Division game, then great. Somebody else is going to come into the market and take the cake. And it's only a matter of time before somebody actually comes in and gets the formula correctly, because this is not like your, live service games that are here that are free to play with all that stuff. It's a live service game that does have a really strong proposition attached to it. And, the day before, even though the game was not necessarily, in my opinion, my cup of tea, and it wasn't true in its proposition, the day before basically kind of tried to, put an apocalyptic game in a sense using the Division theme to try to mask itself and try to pull in the Division community, right? So one small development team, as, disruptive or dishonest or whatever you want to call them as they may have been, they saw the potential and they were able to catch enough interest from that community. So Ubisoft is not going to be unique in this position. I think they're just going to be the ones to lose out because they're probably chasing money, and if they're not interested, then that's their loss. I am in no way, really concerned as to if they're going to make a Division 3 game or not, to be very honest at this point, because the gaming industry has changed so much. If they don't do it, someone else is going to do it. Then you had Outriders. Outriders came in with a few things that they were talking about. The game never necessarily hit the longevity and such because they didn't necessarily, in my opinion, have the burst, in terms of sales at launch. But more companies are going to be trying. I think what needs to happen now, and this is the formula, a development firm just needs to invest the money, get the right formula, and be able to capture an audience and provide them with what it is that they need, and they're going to basically win it. Because Destiny is also another game that's, playing in this space and, has been hit or miss much lately, but they seem to be winning because Destiny players will buy expansions and stuff. So there's still room in the market. So I don't see any reason why Ubisoft will want to basically abandon it. And they do, someone else is going to come in and fill the void. But these are my thoughts. I just want to hear your thoughts in the comment section as well. Shout out to audience members of mine for actually putting in, their own ideas and their thoughts and such in this particular conversation, because, at the end of the day, this is very interesting for you to basically have, these ideas fleshed out and ironed out, because the gaming scene is wild. It really is wild. Anyways, thanks so much for watching. I appreciate you guys' time and audience, and hopefully we'll talk pretty soon in another one. Peace out.